You can be a participant now.
Yay.
So I just have some really rough lines. You can see, you know, I haven't erased these two lines here, so I might spend some time doing that. And for, you know, after class, if people want to keep working on this, they can add color. You could paint it, use markers, colored pencils, pastels. So I'm not really concerned about my initial guidelines. If, like I had said earlier, I was working in a lighter pencil, like a 2H or a 4H, those lines probably wouldn't be as visible right now, but that's okay. For my drawing and the sake of this demonstration, this will work. So now I have, it almost looks just like a French door, you know, a window with some panes in it. All right, so we're going to create some depth within each of our boxes. And to do that, we're just, again, going to use artistic license because we don't have a shelf in front of us that we are looking at. So you can use your straight edge, or you can just kind of eyeball it. So we want to give the illusion that we are kind of looking from, if we were to sit in front of this shelf, we might see like this panel here. We might not see the interior wall here, but because we don't know how big this shelf is. But if we were to, you know, be sitting right here, we might see the interior wall over here. So we're going to draw that. So to draw that, all you're going to do is you're going to create a little diagonal line on the inside of this corner here, just kind of going down. And then we want to create a parallel line to this wall here. And however far we bring it down is however far this kind of side wall is from where our vantage point is. When we go to draw in our objects, we're going to be probably covering up some of these lines and erasing it, but it's helpful to kind of feel that sense of depth so that we can, you know, place our objects in there. So I'm just going to bring it down maybe, I don't know, about 1/4 inch from the bottom, and then just draw a line straight across. And then you could, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it like that. So there's the inside left wall here, and then I'm just going to drop this one over the top like that. You could draw in this line, I kind of hesitated before, but it creates this funny little optical illusion. And the reason why I decided not to is we're going to be shading a lot of this anyway. So it's probably going to be irrelevant. But for the purpose of perspective now, this line is most key. All right, then we're going to go into this square, and we're going to work up here, bring that line down. Kind of doesn't have to be the exact same angle, but about the same length, because these panels are similar. And then we're going to bring this line over like that. And it's almost like now we're sitting in front of this panel kind of with this tunnel vision zooming in. And we can bring this one down here like so, and then repeat it. So now we've created 2 little boxes for where our objects are going to sit. And we'll move over to this one too. And this one, I'm going to bring this one down like that. Actually, no, sorry. I have my drawing too that I created earlier this morning that's sitting next to me. So I keep glancing over at it, which I can show you. It was one of my loose sketches.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay, sorry about that. So we have this line, and then we're going to go into this one here. So this one here, we're just going to create a straight across. and a straight down, just like that. And then we'll go over here and we're going to do the same thing. So we'll go and just create.
Kara, could you scooch your page to the left a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool.
And I made a big goof because I was looking at my sketch upside down. So, but it's easily fixable. We're just going to erase these two lines. I'm looking at this, I'm like, that's not correct. Just like that. We'll just clean those up a bit. Nothing to see here. There we go. All right. So now we're going to continue on with the bottom panel. So that one, we're going to do just like what I was going to do up here when it was upside down. So we can create both of these because, you know, I picture myself like we have shelves similar to this in our living room. And so if I'm sitting on the floor, I'm closer to the bottom shelf and I can kind of see in that one. And then the upper shelf is above me and I can't see the floor. I can just see the interior top side. So we're gonna go like that. We can bring this one over like that. And we'll do the same to this one. And I'm not using my straight edge anymore because, again, a lot of these lines, they're just, right now they're guidelines just for, you know, the interior dimensions, but they're going to be shaded and covered when we start to put our objects in there. I'm going to move into this one, create this side panel here, bring it straight up. And the reason I'm not doing an angle here is all of this kind of is going to be in shadow. That's going to be my artistic license for, you know, how I'm creating my light source, and we'll talk about that as we start to put our objects in. So I just have it kind of place held like that. And then this last one here. So we'll do this one, kind of come to the outer corner, go across. And
could you pull, I'm sorry, slightly more to the left so I can see that?
That's okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. So now we have this kind of framework, you know, and this line is very wiggly, but that's okay because who knows what I'm going to put in here and how that might be casting a shadow. And, you know, shadows aren't perfectly straight. I mean, a wall is going to be straight, but again, I'm not worried about it. So now you have to think about your objects and where you want to place your objects within your shelf portrait. If I have a Sharpie, for example, I might want to think about how I want to position my Sharpie. This is a favorite art tool of mine, so this was another object. So I might want to think about, you know, where I want to put this. Do I want to just leave it flat and draw it and kind of squeeze it in really tiny? Do I want to make this Sharpie feel an enormous presence because it's really important to me and it defines a lot of kind of like the first tool that I grab and my role as an artist and a teacher. So when I was kind of playing around with my composition this morning, I was thinking, okay, I don't want to draw my Sharpie because with an angle going out. I don't want my eye to leave my paper. So if you have any long, skinny objects, you know, like I have my toilet paper tube, I have my paint tube, I might want to be really careful with the angle that I put those objects on so that my eye doesn't kind of just fall out of my picture. So for my Sharpie, I'm going to actually draw it on the bottom as an anchor point to compositionally kind of pull my eye into my work of art. I might start by drawing my Sharpie down here. So when you're drawing it, you want to just think about your basic shape. So the basic shape for me is just this long, skinny rectangle with a curved bottom. Now, I really want to have a presence for this Sharpie, even though it's just this everyday object. To me, it's pretty important. So I'm going to really make this Sharpie known. I'm going to go right into this little first kind of shelf space and think about how I'm going to draw my Sharpie and like really just kind of have it fill in here, kind of just leaning off to the side. And I don't know if you can see it from where I'm sitting. I kind of see the little clip on the side. So I'm just going to draw that little detail. And then I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to do any shading. I'm going to start to place in everything else because I might decide, you know what, I want to change things around a little bit. So I'm just place holding my Sharpie in that spot for now. And I'll set that off to the side. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to draw your object. And you can start to think about, you know, where your other objects are going to go. If we had, you know, like a bigger shelf with more components, or if it was a different shape, or maybe it was an open, just an open shelf with no case around it, that also might determine where we place things and the importance of them. You know, if you're a coffee drinker and coffee is super important to you, it might be more important to you than, you know, your Sharpie marker. You might want to put that coffee mug like right in the center of your artwork and make it really big. So I have my Sharpie, so I'm going to go to this little tube of paint. And what I find interesting is, you know, if I was to stand it upright like this, my writing is upside down. And if I wanted to spend some time really getting into the intricacies and the details of all of these little letters, I think that's kind of visually interesting to create it upside down. I think that adds some sort of visual interest, and it has other languages that it's written in too, so I think that that could really play into my drawing as well. So I'm going to think about where I want to put this. I probably don't want to put it right here. I don't want to put it, you know, on its side, because then it kind of competes with this Sharpie. I don't even want to put it right next to the Sharpie because it's very long and skinny also. So I'm going to think about, I'm going to actually put it up here. Now I can draw it really tiny, or I can use it again to fill that space. So when I'm drawing it, I'm not going to think about all of these tiny little details right now. I just want to start with the shape itself. So I'm going to go all the way up to the top. I see this cap, which is narrower at the bottom than the width of the end of the tube. Just looking at identifying the shapes, kind of breaking down the shapes. So I'm not saying, hey, it's a tube of paint. To me, it's, oh, I see an oval. I see a rectangle. I see two diagonal lines that kind of, they're almost parallel, but they're a little tilted out as they get to the wider end. And I'm just gonna kind of lay in my tube there. And again, I still see all of these other little guidelines from my shelf in the back. I'm not gonna worry about it. Now, I have two other objects that I'd shown earlier, the pine cone and this little sculpture, and they're very similar in shape and kind of in size as well. So I'm going to use both of them. They're both organic, free form shapes. I think they kind of contrast nicely with these more geometric shapes. So this one is definitely triangular in form, this pine cone. I don't know if you guys can see it tipped on its side. So I'm going to think about where I want to put this one. And there's a lot of texture. Now with my paint tube, I have some really interesting, it's not textural in the sense that you can feel it, but there's a lot of variety just within the words that are on the front of it. So I'm going to contrast that with my pine cone. I'm actually going to put my pine cone down here next to my Sharpie. So I'm just going to look at the basic shape, which is just a triangle, kind of like a curvy triangle. And I'm just going to plop in that curvy triangle for my pine cone. And then I'll do the same with this very free-form little sculpture. And I have to think about now compositionally where I want to put that within my whole picture. Nikki, is the image of my artwork blurry on your end, or is it clear?
Pretty clear.
Okay.
It does say that your bandwidth is low.
It does?
Yeah.
You can tell from, oh, how do you tell somebody else's bandwidth?
I don't know, it just says, I think it's because the bandwidth on your phone is the one that's the host video. Or
Oh, interesting.
that thing.
Okay.
So.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Sure.
So I have this little sculpture, and I'm going to ask myself, where do I think I want to put it? I don't want to go right above this other triangular shaped one. I don't really want to go right next to it. I'm actually going to go right up here. So again, it's just kind of looking at the overall outside shape of it and just putting it in there. And now I'm going to go to my glasses. So I could ask myself, do I really want to have them laying as I normally see them? Do I want to have fun with it and open them up? Maybe I want to put my glasses, sideways. So you guys, again, you get to use creative license for how you want to display your objects. I'm going to do mine as though they're kind of standing on their end over here. And I'm just going to look at the overall shape, which is a rectangle. And kind of breaking down each of those shapes individually. So I see smaller little rectangles inside, like that. But I'm not going to spend too much time on my details because I can come back to that. Just kind of like that. So there's my glasses. I'm not even drawing the arms that I see through it because I can do that later too. Right now, we're still just kind of place holding everything. And I'm going to continue on. So I have 3 more squares, and I'm going to ask you guys in the interest of time too, so I can show you some next steps to figure out which one, which objects you want to put in these last 3 boxes. For me, I'm going to use this kind of curvy mug. I think I'll balance it out up here. And then I'm going to do my toilet paper tube down here just to balance out my Sharpie. And then I'm gonna do my picture frame, maybe my picture frame or my glue bottle right here. So I'll work on those and I'll let you guys work on yours. Again, just thinking about the basic shape. So if I'm looking at my mug, I see a circle and I see a rectangle. If I'm looking at the side of it, and I see a half circle for the handle. Just gonna squeeze that in there, just like that. And I have my tube, which I'm gonna that. And I think I'll do this picture frame so you guys can see what I'm looking at. Actually make it bigger than my pine cone, just so that these two aren't competing in size. All right, so once you have your objects, you get to decide which one you want to start kind of shading and thinking about the shadows in the background too. So we'll start up here with the mug. I like to start at the top and work my way down when I'm kind of fine tuning my drawing, especially working in pencil or colored pencil or charcoal. But you could easily just get another piece of paper and set it underneath your hand so that you're not smudging your drawing if you're working and moving around too. Because these are preliminary sketches, I'm not even going to worry about that now, but that's, you know, if I spent all of this time finishing my Sharpie and I didn't want to smudge it when I went to work on my cup, it's a good idea just to have a separate piece of paper as a little cover. So for my cup, now this again is where you get to decide, you know, if you're just working in pencil, we can think about values. So I have my dark values in color, but I also have my dark values with my light source. So I have shadow in here. I have a little reflection along the top edge here. I have some bright reflections here. So all of those things are going to be, you know, again, it's personal preference for everyone with how far they want to take their artwork and their, you know, in the details. If we were going to start with this cup or whatever your first object is that you're working on, I'm really going to think about now how I can kind of fine tune the outside kind of contour of my object and shade it. And then all of this area that we had initially kind of drawn out as the inside of our shelf, we can now kind of feel a little gratified in shading that in too, because that's going to be that interior wall and shadow. So you can spend some time kind of creating some really dark values to bring your objects more to the foreground. I'm going to turn my cup and just put it away from me so I can see it. I know you get a different vantage point. This little line on the inside of my cup, which was my original kind of guideline when I was drawing my shadows, I can erase that. And you're just going to continue working and shading. So for my mug, I'm going to create now the opening of my mug. And I see the inside of my mug is pretty dark on one side. And you can draw it as you see it in front of you. Or you can really play around with light sources too. Again, I'm drawing pretty dark so that you can see it on the screen. You probably don't need as harsh of a contour edge, but I want you guys to be able to see my drawing. And then I'm going to just continue working on, I can draw in this kind of free form organic band across my mug, which was that kind of like dark blue section. And then think about, you know, how dark is that value maybe compared to the inside shadow. They're both pretty dark from where I'm looking, so I can create the same intensity with my pencil. And then I have like a lighter band up here. Again, it's kind of free form. And I'm just going to continue on. This project isn't meant to be, you know, photorealism. It's really to just start to train our eye to see. And it's just kind of a different way of creating a work of art. You know, not your everyday portrait, using objects to kind of define us in a different way. Thought it was kind of cool. And then I can shade down here underneath my handle, that same little back patch. And I'm turning my pencil, you know, as I'm following this kind of rounded shape, I can really turn my pencil. You know, now that we're all at home, art supplies might be very limited. So we might not have smudging tools or blending tools. Your pinky works really well. Cotton swab works really well. Just to kind of get in there. I know it's not super professional. But it can kind of help blend our colors. And then if you have, I like to use a little gum eraser. If you have like a nice sharp edge to your gum eraser, you can just kind of erase in those highlights. We're working pretty tiny, you know, overall. So again, we're not going for these super detail unless we're artists that work on a micro scale.
I love micro scale.
Yeah, Sarah does. Sarah is all about the tiny.
I'm like really enjoying drawing small right now. Man, I haven't drawn small in a while. It's really nice.
Did you see the tiny art show, Sarah?
Oh, I did. I haven't sent you what I created.
Oh, so yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to tell Nikki and share what Tiny Art Show is. There's an Instagram account called Tiny Art Show, and they put a call out to artists to create these miniature art installations for like a contest. And it was really,
that's so cool.
It was really cool. So I had shared that with Sarah.
It's pretty rad.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go in here and share. Sorry, Sarah, you were going to say something.
Oh, you're good. When I was making those mini museums, I made these very small people. They're over there, but they're so small. And I'd spent so long on these tiny little people. And I decided to like go outside and try to, you know, make it look like they're standing on a mountain. So I took like a little yam.
Oh, right. To totally push that sense of scale.
Yeah, it was so fun. So I'll have to send them to you, Kara, but they're
see it.
Looks like he's on top of a mountain in like a big forest. And then I zoomed out to take a picture of just like grass. And
that's cool.
It's pretty silly.
Send it to me. I would like to see it.
Yeah.
So then this back wall in here, you can probably lightly shade it. You don't want it to be the same value necessarily as your object because you still want to be able to highlight your object, but it's not going to be as bright as your paper or having, you know, a spotlight shined in there. And then I'm creating kind of like just a little cast shadow where my object is sitting. And I can kind of just blend that up and into the background. So there's my little mug. And then I'll go into my glasses. So my glasses are very dark. And that's fun. I like to start with the darkest values first. It's a personal preference for me. I don't know if it's the right way, quote unquote, but for me, when I teach, especially younger students, it's easier to identify the darks sometimes than the lights within a work of art, or when we're drawing from objects in front of us, to kind of isolate those sections. So I'm going to do the same when I go with my glasses. Now with my glasses, I do have, I have an overhead light above me. So even where the light is hitting, it's still black, but there's a reflection on it. So I'm going to have to figure out, what I want, how I want to represent that in my drawing with how much pressure I'm putting on my pencil. I have these little details over here too that I can draw in. Now, my glasses are very dark, and I had shaded this interior wall very dark as well. So I can decide, do I want to maybe blend this entire back wall? And if this interior dimension of this little box is very dark, like here, I might not even see my glasses sitting there until they're kind of, there's some space behind it, like in this space here. So that's something to play around with. Again, it's artistic license because we're not creating our objects within a shelf unit right now. So if I was going to shade in here, that side panel, all of a sudden my glasses disappear, but that's okay. Maybe I want to play around with that and just see what happens. Maybe I don't really see my glasses too much in the shadows of that little side panel. And then they kind of pop out. Or maybe I'm trying to define them just with some different texture marks with my pencil and how I'm moving my pencil in my paper. And thank you again for everybody's flexibility. When I goofed with my example to start with my paper being upside down.
Oh, good. If you hadn't said anything, I certainly wouldn't have known the difference.
Well, I was looking at my drawings. No. I goofed. I have to own it.
Well, I'm sure for the start of this class, you're going to be seeing my face instead of your sketching. So
Okay.
I think we're all learning over here. It's all good.
That's all right. No, it's good. I'm just really thankful. I hope that it can be, somewhat of a resource in this time, however long we're at home.
Yep.
That people can take advantage of it. I would love to do another class again.
Yes, for sure.
When we closed the studio doors temporarily, I didn't bring any art materials home. And I work personally mostly in gouache and acrylic on a small scale as well. And I have a set of, nice pencils, but my pencils just keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter because I'm using them, so much more. And when I'm in the studio, we have dozens of pencils, so I can just grab one. So, it's those little things that I took for granted of having access to more materials than I do now. But I really wanted to, to kind of be in the same situation as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm going to shade in this part behind my glasses up here. And in here. And then I can even think about, you know, I see the arm behind my glasses kind of bending a little like this. And I see some reflections on my glass because I actually, you know, they have glass lenses in them. So we're only working in black and white. We have to really challenge ourselves to think about how we're going to be representing color in a black and white value scale. On my glasses, I have kind of a green, I don't know if you guys can see it from your angle, but I have like a green circle from the bulb that's reflecting. It's not very dark, but it's not clear. So I can kind of draw that in, that little reflection mark on my glasses, just as a shape. See the arm kind of comes behind here and it bows out over here. And there's some light parts, but again, you can use your eraser and erase into it to add those kind of highlights back in. I'm actually going to sharpen my pencil quickly. And I know we're almost out of time. But I just want to remind everybody, you know, to continue working with your objects and really identifying just the basic shape, breaking those shapes down into smaller pieces. So when I'm looking at my glasses, I keep saying the word glasses, but really it's because that's what the object is. But really, it's just lines and shapes that kind of make up that whole structure. And if we kind of break down our objects into simple shapes, it's so much easier to draw them. I see this, it's really dark back here. And then I'm gonna shade this interior wall. You can think about line direction with your pencil. You know, the softer your, or the softer your pencil, the higher your B number, the softer your graphite is going to be. It's going to be kind of squishy and easy to blend, easier than an H pencil. Just going to blend with my finger. I don't have a smudging stick at home either, and that's okay. And I'm gonna go in here and think about what would be behind my glasses in my shelf. And the way I position my glasses, they're not really casting a shadow. So I'm not gonna draw a shadow inside like I did with my mug. I'm gonna go back in and create a little more highlight on my arm. Like that. And then you'd move right along to your next object. So for this one, I have a smooth object, so I can really play around with the light reflections that I see on it, but also what's printed on it. When I go to my photograph, I'm gonna, decide, well, this, I don't know if you can see that person. This was actually my dad's parents. It's a really pretty old photo. So this figure of my grandfather is pretty washed out. So I can figure out, how I want to kind of draw the people in here. the shapes I see. So you can really have fun and play around with, you know, how detailed you want to get everything. Vicki, are we going until 3?
Yes, so just go a few
Okay.
minutes over 3 because we started late. So
Sure.
maybe do the
Oh,
last one, and then there's some, you know,
yeah.
some,
I just wanted to check in. No problem.
and then just tell us how to, if you have any last minute thoughts about how to finish our shadow
Yes.
box.
So I would say you're going to keep working in each of your shapes just like you've done. So you'll identify the parts of the object, thinking about the value, the lights, the darks, and any little details you want to add, and then how it sits within the box itself. So with these up here, because we were seeing the shadow of the top and the side, you're going to do the same thing down here. So except down here, you might, because we're seeing the bottoms of these shelves, don't forget to shade the bottoms of your shelves also. I'm not going to spend time shading all of my shelves, but just so that you're fully shading all of those areas that we had originally kind of marked out in the same way that I demonstrated these two here. And then you can think about, you know, what you want to treat your overall shelf with. Do you want to just leave it white? Do you want to create a color just to frame it and highlight it? Do you want to outline it in maybe a thin pen? So any of those things to kind of take into consideration. Or do you want to just start putting objects on the top of your shelf or creating what you might see around your shelf? Or you could just simply cut it out and have that be the complete work of art too. So there's no right way to work on it. It's really personal preference. We're just, again, emphasizing value, kind of that depth perspective so that you're really grasping as though you're looking into each little unit, and then identifying the little shapes within each of your objects.
Can you talk about the toilet paper roll? So what are the parts that you would shade and what are the parts that you would maintain the shelf?
So for this one here, I have, well, the way I am seeing it on my desk is going to be different than the way you're seeing it. But I'll just move it off to the side so that you can kind of see just my drawing. So I can see the inside. So I'm actually going to draw the inside of how I see it. Now, it's also going to depend on your light source, or if you want to just copy this, that's totally fine too. So there's that kind of interior wall. And then I can erase this little guideline that was from the back, just like that. And the side here, texturally, where the paper was stuck, is just a little bit darker. Now, before I shade that, I might want to just erase these little lines too, just so they don't get in the way and I have to re-erase my drawing. And I'm just going to shade like that. Now I see, because it is a toilet paper roll, and I see that kind of split in it where how it's formed when it's, you know, made. I'm just going to kind of follow that line up the side. I'm noticing a crease. I might want to draw that crease just as a line. And then I start to notice, you know, oh wait, there's another little shadow just on this side. And my light is shining over on this section. That's going to be the lightest. And it's also shining the most right in here. So that's going to be the lightest in this area. So maybe I want to create a middle tone right there, just like that. This part isn't as dark as the interior shadow, but it is darker because it's starting to kind of wrap around the back side where I don't see it. And again, I'm just going to kind of blend out. I mean, we could probably spend an hour just drawing a toilet paper roll if we really wanted to get it, you know, like exactly like a photograph.
Maybe that'll be a funny thing to do.
It could be. I would think, you know, I certainly have a collection of them. So right where that crease is that I was talking about, like I'm noticing there is a subtle difference in value. So I'm really just ever so lightly going, just kind of like hugging that area a little bit more with my pencil. Just kind of going back and forth. And my crease, or that like split, gets a little bit wider here. You know, I have this kind of outline, but as soon as you start to shade in your background, that outline is going to slip away. So you don't really have to worry about that initial kind of contour edge, the outline of our drawing. Like that. And I'm creating that really dark value on the exterior of the toilet paper, but that kind of interior wall and ceiling and floor of my shelf. And then when you create, you know, your middle values back here, this was an extra line from before, I could erase that. You want to think about, you know, what kind of value that back wall is going to have so that your tube still is highlighted. It doesn't just kind of like fall in and blend. Maybe it's casting a shadow on the back wall, and there actually is some darkness near that edge, like that. Also change line direction too. You know, I realize all of my lines are kind of going this way. Even though it's subtle, you know, if I don't blend, I can see that my pencil lines are all going kind of diagonally up and to the right. You can change that up just by changing your pencil direction, and that differentiates the object from the background too. Something like that. Does that help you?
That's great. Thank you. Can we all like bring our pictures